public doesn't need to know what
They don't need to know.
what kind of screw-ups we've made. Cut 2.
But to the public, it's rule number 1.
How much more fall practice you guys have left?
We got a couple weeks. We've got this week. We've got next. And then we'll finish that first weekend in November. We play North Georgia here in 2 weeks. Looking forward to that. Always such a tough test to play their group. Great facility. Great test for our kids.
They got the turf
Love it.
field now, right? That's sick. Here we are back in the juice box. Got Justin Scali, Piedmont University head coach with us. Baseball development show. We're going to talk some baseball, talk some college baseball today. Coach, thanks for coming down a second time.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. So happy to be here.
We don't have to get into why this is the second time.
Not at all.
No, man, like, you know, I woke up this morning and it's like 45 degrees or whatever it is. You guys are practicing.
We are. It's funny, you know, this will prepare us a little bit more for what we do in the spring. You know,
Right.
We play a spring sport in the winter, I feel like sometimes. And we're fortunate in our part of the country, but it's starting to get that little, you know, crisp air going.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, we had an overcast day of practice the other day and it really got warm. So starting to get kind of a little bit more familiar with what we're seeing. We're seeing the grass change.
Yeah.
We're getting into that time of year, man. It's, you know, we're wrapping up our fall here in a couple weeks, but certainly getting a little bit more chilly out there too.
Yeah, you said you guys are wrapping up sometime in November. Like, how cold does it get towards the end of the fall?
Yeah, it'll get, you know, when we feel it a little bit more is like those Saturday mornings,
Yeah.
you know, if we get maybe a little defensive segment going in the morning before we're going to scrimmage, you know, it'll be a little bit chilly, you know, the dew, the shoes are getting wet. Like
Yeah.
you've got that stuff coming in, you know, in the low 40s or high 40s. You know, we're about to put rye seed out too. So the hope there is always that you don't get any frost in the
Right.
first couple of days when your seed is down there. You don't
Yeah.
want to lose any of that. So it's a little bit of a crapshoot, but certainly just part of it.
Yeah. So I was about to ask about the grass. When you guys put down rye, do you do it before the fall season is over? Or do you wait till, so before fall is finished up, you guys are putting out rye already?
We are, contrary to what my assistant Coach Craig would probably like us to do, who's you know, in charge of our field with
Okay.
Coach Pierce. But it's tricky with the time and the amount. You know, always to me, it's our team practice is the priority. But obviously, we've got to get rye seed down because that's what we play.
Well, I was going to say, if you
know.
wait too long, you miss the window a little bit, right?
Correct. And if you go too soon, it could still be too hot, and you're not going to get a good stand there. So it is a fine line. We'll probably go out with it probably next week, but then, you know, the risk we run is we're going to be using it, you know, while it's out there, hoping it germinates and does all that. And our folks do a good job. We'll have to come back through and, you know, reseed some areas and some of the high traffic areas, but we were fortunate. We had a really good stand of grass last year after a couple years where it was a little bit spotty. So
Yeah.
we'll keep working hard to make sure that stays the same.
Yeah, you guys are getting turf management 101
I didn't
right
expect
here.
that.
Right, exactly. No, so that's awesome, man. I want to introduce Coach a little bit more. I mean, we talked about who you are, where you coach, but you know, Piedmont being a Division III institution, we're talking about fall practice and all this stuff. So just so you guys understand, you guys are limited in the number of practices, the amount of time you have with your players in the fall. What does that look like?
So they've actually upped it this year. It formerly was you got 4 weeks, 4 days a week in the fall. Now they've given us 24 days in the fall that you can spread out a little bit more. So we've chosen to elongate it a little bit to be able to kind of, I guess, just be around our guys a little bit longer to keep the feel of a little bit longer fall season. If you decide to use less than the 24, you can also tack those on to the front of your spring schedule, where you get 15 weeks dating back from Selection Sunday is what your allotment is in the spring. So basically what it did, it gave us 8 extra practice opportunities with this new rule.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, when I was there playing for you, I played for Coach back in the day, guys. In 2010, 2011, I was there. We got 16 days, and I'm pretty sure we did, like you said, it was the 4 days a week.
Yep.
I think we did like a Tuesday, then like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday we would do or something like that. And those I remember those weekend days, man. They were like 3 days. It was
They're
like
long days.
yeah, it was Saturday morning defensive practice for 3 hours. Go eat lunch, come back inter squad number one. Go eat dinner, come back inter squad number two under the lights. Are you guys still grinding that heavy, or are you able to spread things out a little bit more?
We're able to spread it out a little more. We don't do the 3 session days. We'll do some 2 session Saturdays where we'll kind of come out in the morning, do a little bit of defense, maybe some team defense, individual defense, maybe some cage work, some more individualized hitting stuff. Kind of break for lunch, and then we'll come back pregame BP, and then IO, more of a traditional
Sure.
kind of Saturday game day with the tack on stuff we do in the morning. So we'll start usually 2 or 3 o'clock, and then play 9, 10, 11, 12 innings, kind of wherever we're at with our pitching,
Okay.
and try to get it ultra competitive that way.
Yep. Awesome. So, for all you guys that are in high school or younger, and you're wondering, well, what does practice look like in college? Like, without giving away all your secrets, kind of dive into, you're talking about that Saturday morning practice that's very team oriented, and then diving into inter squads, and then there's individual time. Like, how do you guys break that up? What do pitchers do versus position players? Like, what's that look like from a practice schedule perspective?
Yeah, when my coaches and I meet each day for practice planning. So, we've kind of got conceptually what we're thinking about doing that day from a team perspective, from a team defensive perspective, certainly. Days we need to slide individual defense in there. We always start every non-scrimmage practice with a base running segment. Base stealing is a really big part of our game. We try to be, an aggressive style of offense from a standpoint of trying to put a lot of pressure on our opponents. So there's always, we devote 20 to 30 minutes a day to base running. And that's an expensive allotment when you figure, time standpoint. But we put a lot of emphasis on it, and we love to do it first because we have, theoretically, we have our players' most sharpest focus at the beginning of practice. So we'll start every practice that's not a scrimmage day with a base running segment. Then there's usually some semblance of defense, whether that's individual defense and team defense, or just indie, or just, team. We'll kind of structure that in. And then, obviously we're going to hit every day on the field too. So where the pitchers fall into that, they may do some individual stuff. They're obviously going to be incorporated if we're doing team defense,
Yep.
bunt defense, first and thirds, cuts, relays, fly ball communication, all that stuff. And then usually during batting practice is when they're going to get their daily work done. So
Okay.
that's flat grounds, bullpens, whatever their throwing program might be, arm care routine, all that stuff's happening usually in and around batting practice.
Okay.
But that's kind of a standard day. And then if it's a scrimmage day, we're going to cut down some of that other stuff, make more of a pregame BP type style. And then usually we have a group of pitchers that are throwing, and then the others are into their daily routine too. Again, usually during the batting practice segment there.
Cool. Awesome. No, I mean, that's a pretty traditional flow, but like you said, having it structured and meeting with your coaches and just having the plan set out, I'm sure that's easier for you guys. It's easier for the players. Everybody kind of knows what to expect, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And I think too, like, it gives us as coaches a little more peace of mind, and just us being able to feel like we're organized. And then I really like that my assistant coaches are able to weigh in on what they're seeing and what they feel like we need as a team in a given day, whether that's, Coach Craig and Coach Pierce, who do such a great job with us offensively, whether it's them, saying, excuse me, hey, we need to, we really want to work on our 2-strike approach, today, or hey, we got to get into some situational hitting. We want to work on these kind of situations, handling the bat. Or, hey, this is a day we want to do more out of hand, or we want to hit the machine, high velo, high spin, need a feel-good day. Where are we at positionally from a live defensive standpoint during BP? Giving them the opportunity to weigh in because, they're out there evaluating and watching too. And I want them to feel that ownership and practice planning too.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I think, setting that up in the fall too, especially when you've got new guys on campus, whether they're freshmen, whether they're transfers, setting that standard of, okay, like we've got a plan, we've got a system, we're going to carry out that system, we're going to be prepared, and then you guys are going to get to show that in an in-game setting, right, in your inner squads, and then, like you said, at the end of the fall when you get to play North Georgia in the fall game, setting that standard is huge. Like, do you feel like the guys kind of start to buy into that, especially, you get halfway through the fall and towards the end of the fall, and you see them start buying into that routine a little bit?
For sure. I think, they know or they come to learn, the new guys, that, I'm kind of a type A type, person, very, schedule and routine and all that stuff. It's a starting pitcher. So, you know what time you're going to pitch, you know what time the game is, you know what you're going to face. That's just where I'm comfortable. So they're going to get a practice plan you send to them via PDF by usually 11 o'clock that day. Yeah. I want our players to come down to the field knowing, this is what we've got today. I want them to be able to spend some time to be mentally prepared for, what we're going to be working on, because I feel like we'll transition better. I feel like we'll have maybe a little more focus if it's, unknown. I wrestle with, myself trying to find days where maybe I don't send a practice plan, because I do want us to be able to adapt. Yeah. I do want us to be able to, think on our feet. We're not, regimented to the minute, but we will kind of list, here are the things we're going to work on today. Here's a kind of an approximation of time. But, hey, if this is not going well, we may rep it longer. Or if it's not going well, we may, hey, this is diminishing returns. We're not getting this today. Let's just slide into the next thing we were going to do. Or, hey, let's do it a little bit more, and we'll just scrap, whatever else we had on there. And, we'll pick that up tomorrow. We'll fire that back up tomorrow or whatnot. But I think, them getting a schedule for me, I know as a player, I always appreciated knowing the plan to feel like that's how I was comfortable. And I know not everybody operates that way, but I know I did. So that's kind of how I,
Yep.
communicated to our guys too.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot, man. And it's funny, you're talking about just being detailed. You're talking about being kind of type A. I find myself to be a little bit like that too, except for when I don't hit the stop button on the don't ask. So, I love this though, because you're using that. You're using the fact that you know that about yourself, and you're putting it to good use so that others can be prepared based on the fact that you like to be detailed and thorough. And, this is something that I've tried to do on the travel ball side of things. For you guys that don't know who I am, I coach travel ball in addition to doing this stuff, the development stuff, and it's so hard to do, because with travel ball, you only get 1 or 2 practices a week. You play your tournaments, which are not regimented. There is no, you can try to show up an hour and a half before the game, but the game has a 1-hour window it could start in. Right. If the other game gets over early, the umpires want to start in 20 minutes. Your pitcher only has 27 minutes to get ready now, and that's if we back it up 7 minutes, because I'm not getting a guy loose in 14 minutes. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Or the other game goes into extras, or the inning takes forever to finish, and you start the game 40 minutes late, and now it's like, okay, when do you start guys? When do you get guys going? How long does BP take? How often do you run into this where it's like, okay, you've got a practice plan set for the day. You think it's going to take 3 hours to run this practice, and you realize you're spending more time on something. You've already gone 3 hours. You realize you've got 2 more things to do. I'm sure this changes day to day, but how often do you have to say, okay, guys, let's turn in for the day. Let's get going again tomorrow. Or, hey, we're going to get everything done today that we said we were going to do, and we're working overtime.
Yeah, we'll do that sometimes. I think the biggest driver of it for us is the cafeteria. Like, we've got to get the guys to their meal, that they're paying for. So the CAF really, structures us from a standpoint of working within those CAF windows, right? Lunch ends at this time and dinner ends at this time, and that's our window to get practice in. So there are definitely some days where, we'll just say, hey, just leave the field, go ahead and go eat, or, in the beauty of baseball is, of course, there's no clock, right? So if it's a scrimmage day and we're planning on playing 9 or 10 innings and we're starting at 3 o'clock, well, the CAF closes at 7:30. Well, we should be okay. But, if we're not in the zone and, we've got a lot of, long counts and we're not playing clean and we're swinging it great and the innings are going on and we've got some command struggles or whatever. Well, that game gets elongated, and now it's like let's make sure we may have to stop some innings,
Right.
right? Where it's like on and off. We'll on and off some innings,
Right.
just to stay, just to keep the game moving. We try, without being too much into it, but you try to almost manufacture a competitive game throughout.
Yeah.
And when you're scrimmaging and it's, if it's 8-0, somebody in the third or fourth inning, of course, as coaches and our players, like we're all trying to be locked in on every pitch, but just the nature of our sport, 8, 9, 10-0 in the third or fourth inning, you're going to lose some focus and intensity.
Right.
And do we alter the scoreboard? Do we, flop something around? Do we reset it? Just okay, now we're going to play a 6-inning game. Trying to find those ways to manufacture additional, competitiveness when the game itself, the flow of the game itself, doesn't create that.
Right.
But we've got to be flexible to an extent. But also, I mean, these are things we're trying to get done. Like, we're going to grind to try to be good at this stuff today.
Sure.
And, we may sacrifice something along the way. Most baseball players want to hit, right? And we typically hit after we're playing good defense.
Right.
And that's kind of the mindset. Like, we're going to be good defensively, and then we earn the right to hit.
Right.
And that's why we usually hit at the end of practice and not more towards the beginning or in the middle. That, of course, our guys are swinging pre-practice all the time, working the cages. But on-field BP is traditionally the last thing we do on a non-scrimmage day, because we're going to be good defenders, and then we're going to go hit.
Yep. That's awesome, man. No, I think you're speaking a little bit to how resilient guys need to be able to operate on this schedule, to put in the time. Like, this takes a lot of time, guys, to practice. I mean, it sounds like, it's only 24 days in the fall, but you're putting in a lot of time. Putting in a lot of time during those days. They're long hours. Keep in mind, guys are in class. They're doing school at the same time. Some guys are acclimating to new environments, the freshmen and the transfers. Like, how does this prepare you? You feel like the fall prepares you guys well for the spring? I mean, obviously, Division III, you're playing a smaller schedule than, like, say, what a D1 schedule would be like in the spring, and your fall is also shorter. But for you guys, do those two match up? Does the fall match up and prepare you well for the spring and your ultimate goals of what you're trying to achieve in the spring?
I think so. I think the biggest variable that you don't get in the fall is just the travel piece.
Yeah.
Baseball, it's not as physically demanding, the actual gameplay. It's not like a football game where it's like you're blocking someone and they're rushing you and you're trying, it's not that physical confrontation, but the grueling nature of baseball is just the longevity of it. It's multiple nights on the road. It's long bus trips. It's 3-day trips instead of, most sports are up there for one contest, come back. That's what the grind of the baseball season is. Even though it's the Division III levels, 40 games. It's a long year,
Right.
And I think the fall kind of dips our toe into that, and then you really start learning it certainly in the spring. But you're right; they're balancing, what they need to do in the classroom, which at our level is ultimately why our players are there. But balancing that with practice, games, family. All the stuff that just comes into being a college student and a college athlete. It certainly can be a grind, and I think the fall is a great kind of initiator to that process. But we may practice 24 days in the fall, official team practice, but our guys are in the facility every day.
Sure.
There was Coach Harris used to say it last year, but talking to our hitters, if you consume food on a given day, you should probably hit. And that's obviously an exaggeration, but to an extent, like if you're on campus and, like yesterday we were we had an event in our field. It was a Sunday. We weren't practicing. And when I got down there were 6 guys in our facility hitting. It's an off day for us, and we had scrimmaged the day before. So that kind of mindset is, hey, there's something we can do every day to get a little bit better. Some days that could just be, hey, we're just going to get out there and get some stretching done.
Yeah.
And other days it's like, hey, I don't like where I'm at with my swing. I might go down here and get a couple hundred swings off the machine,
Sure.
or anything in between. But our guys are out there working, most days, whether it's a team practice day or not.
Yeah. Right. And that's where, I played at this level. I played at the Division III level. You played at the Division III level. Um, that's where you make up a lot of the ground, guys, for the time that you don't, quote unquote, officially get to spend time with your team or your coaches. You make up the ground by, being able to work on your own, putting in the work. I know in the past we had like organized groups of hitting that was not really coach ran. We would just hit together, and it was a structure. A lot of times the upperclassmen would figure it out, put stuff together. That's really where you get better. It's just learning how to like implement some of your own systems as a player as well. To that point, let's get on the recruiting talk a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So listen up for you guys that are in high school and you're trying to figure out this college baseball thing. Division III, okay, recruiting. What are the rules like in a? All right, so each division, JUCO, NAI, like everybody has their own set of rules in terms of how they can recruit, when they can talk to players, how they can talk to players. What does that look like at the D3 level? I know there's been some changes across the board. What are you guys seeing right now?
Yeah, we operate at our level, like in a nutshell, we're 1 to 1.5, 2 years at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you see at some of the larger schools, some of the Power Fives, obviously, they're 3, 4 years down the road. Recruiting. Right now for us, like 26, 27s, like we're not into that class. We're heavy right now in our 24, actively recruiting. And then we've got our 25s we're starting to work on, right? That's more of our window. We can contact guys. We have a little more freedom in periods of when we can contact guys. I know at some of the larger levels they have quiet and dead periods that we don't deal with.
Right.
So we certainly can initiate contact a little bit easier. We also don't have a period where we can't go out and recruit. Whereas some of the larger schools, at the higher levels, NCAA wise, have periods where they can't be off campus recruiting, where we don't have those restrictions. So it is different at every level. I think the biggest thing for us is just getting out and seeing players play. We want to see players play so we can evaluate their skill set against our needs at this given time.
Sure.
We'll have a position group, for example, where we've got a need. We're going to go out and try to hunt some guys that fit the type of player, the type of student, the type of person that we're looking for to be that right fit in our program.
Right. So we'll get to talking about the players and what you guys are looking for here in just a second, because I think that's kind of where you left off. But real quick, like on the rise now is recruiting agencies or recruiting guys, that's all they do, right? They just take care of recruiting for high school guys to get them into college. Me personally, I think this is very helpful for players. I really do. I think it's a wise investment, especially for those that might be a tougher case. You got a late bloomer of a player or somebody that's coming on strong very late in their career. They need to find a place. But do you feel personally with your university that you guys have a lot of connection with those guys? Do you get a lot of interaction from those recruiting guys? Is it mostly just interacting directly with the kids and the families? Like, what does that look like for you guys nowadays?
Definitely both. A lot, I would say the majority of us is going to be more directly to the player and the family, but we do have players in our program that were identified to us through a recruiting person or individual that does that, because the good thing about a lot of those guys is they're well connected.
Sure.
They know a lot of the college programs. They know a lot of the coaches, but they also have a lot of savvy and feel for the level and for which type of player historically has been a good fit in this program based on their style of play, which is sometimes what you don't get, and it's by no fault of their own, but a high school coach, let's say, for example, is trying to promote their player, but they may not be as familiar with our program because of their schedule. They're not able to come out and watch us play.
Right.
And their, knowledge of our program may be based on someone that we've had from their program, or someone that, was maybe in their region that came in and was successful at our place, or in our league or something like that. So those recruiting service individuals usually have a pretty good feel for the coaches and the program and the type of player that tends to be a match, right?
Uh-huh.
Like a lot of times, you'll get someone will say, "Hey, I got a guy for you,"
Right.
and sometimes I want to think about, first of all, when's the last time you've seen us play? Because, I can't speak accurately to a lot of the high school programs in our state, and we have a lot of good baseball here, but if I haven't seen them play recently, I can't speak intelligently about the level of play in their region or at that particular school. Where, maybe historically I can, but that's the biggest thing, is just, seeing a guy play for me trumps all other, avenues to evaluate talent. Those recruiting services, those kind of things, contacts from coaches, that's opening the door. The follow up for me is going to be, hey, let's take a look at the data, the video, the metrics, whatever. Okay, this is a possibility. We're going to go see you play.
Right.
Or we're going to get them to one of our camps so we can evaluate them in person, our staff.
Sure.
Myself or my coaches, because that's ultimately the evaluation that I value, is myself and my coaches, because they're actively comparing a recruit to our current roster.
Right.
We say that all the time. Where is he at now? And my assistant may give me a name of one of our outfielders, let's say, and where do you think his ceiling is? And he might give me another name.
Right.
Right. And that's how we're using, our current roster to kind of identify where this recruit may project. And that's a big part of it. We're certainly at our level, we certainly have to do some projection and some development, but that's kind of, where it is on the recruiting side for us.
Sweet. No, what you just said was gold. So guys, listen, if you tuned out for a little bit, tune back in right now. Your recruiting strategy is look at a player, whether it was referred to you, whether you stumbled upon him on your own, one of your coaches. Look at him, see where he's at right now, and stack him up against your current roster. Then factor in, where do we think he can get to?
Mm-hmm.
What is his ceiling? So high school guys, you are getting compared to other college baseball players right now. You're not getting compared to your high school peers. You're not getting compared to the guy that you took 450 in the woods because he throws 72. You're not getting compared to that guy. You're getting compared to other college baseball players. And I think that's so important for people to understand, because in high school, if you're a high school baseball player, unless you have older brothers or older siblings or family that's played in college, or you've seen a lot of college baseball, all you know is what you've played. You only know, hey, I know what a good high school pitcher looks like. I know what a good high school shortstop looks like. The game is different in college, whether it's Division III, Division II, Division I, JUCO, NAIA, all the different JUCO levels. It's different. What is the biggest factor in the college game that is something that high school players need to adjust to and adapt to, and it just takes time? What would you say the biggest factor or factors are?
Yeah, I would say when I look at like an incoming freshman in our program, and when I'm comparing them to a current, let's say, junior or senior, I don't see typically, there's not that much of a gap in the talent and skill.
Right.
The skill sets are fairly similar. The biggest gap or biggest difference is just the physicality.
Sure.
You get a junior or senior that's been in our strength program for 2, 3, 4 years. They're eating, they're paying better attention to how they eat, their diet, weight room, all the training. They're getting their man muscles. They're growing, they're maturing. So the physicality is the difference. I think the bat to ball skills are similar. The foot speed is similar. The arm strength is similar. And our guys are hopefully, our juniors and seniors are hopefully progressing those skills along. But there's not a huge gap there. The gap is that I see is physically.
Yeah.
Like I had a recruit on campus this weekend, and he was watching us play, and even he made the comment. He's a really good player. And he made the comment, he said, "Oh, Coach, you got some big guys." And I think, we just see our guys as, these are our guys, right? They're working hard or whatever. But, I think a good high school player, I would tell, physically getting yourself as strong as you possibly can, paying good attention to your diet, your sleep, your hydration. Those kind of things are going to be, paths to shorten that gap or get you closer to the players you're about to go compete against when you get to a college program.
Man, I love hearing you say that because I've had several conversations with my guys my team is 17 right now. I just coached their 16U summer, and we got some really good players. We got a couple arms that are 90 and guys knocking on 90. We've got some guys that hit the absolute crap out of the ball. We got some guys that run pretty well. But I pulled them aside one game after a game. We were just talking about whatever, and we might have won the game. I don't even know what the outcome was. But I said, guys, one thing I can tell you right now is that every single guy standing here needs to get stronger if you want to play at the level you're talking about wanting to play at. And some of you, that's not a knock on you guys. Some of you are pretty strong for 16, 17 years old. But it's going to need to progress. The speed, the size, the strength. Just how you hold your body, like how you brace, like all of these things. These are things that we talk about in strength training. It's not all about moving this load, this amount of weight from point A to point B. There's so many other factors in baseball. And like you're talking about all the physicality. One thing that I would say that I notice in the difference in high school and college guys is just their ability to play at a higher speed. The speed of the game. Would you agree?
The play speed.
Right. And all of the physicality stuff, that's what causes that. You're bigger, stronger, faster, hit the ball harder. That causes the speed of play to rise. And every level that guys play at, it's D3, it's D2, it's D1, it's pro ball, it's big league ball. The speed of play goes up at all those levels, and that's probably one of the biggest factors in a guy not being able to or being able to play at the next level. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I think too, something that's valuable for like a high school player, if especially sophomore, junior, you're starting to consider college baseball, go see some of the schools in your area play. Go check out a game at a Division I level. Go check out a D2 game or a D3 game, a JUCO game, whatever, NAIA game. See the level of play. Look at the skill sets, but also the physicality, velocity, foot speed, bat speed, all the things that you can just assess a roster. It's why we're really heavy in inviting our recruits to come back and watch a practice.
Yeah.
They'll come for their visit. They'll do, the admission stuff, financial aid, campus tour, meet with a professor, meet with our coaches. We tour our facilities, all that. And we always tell them, like, if after today we're still on the board for you, we're still a possibility, come back for a practice. Talk to our players away from the coaches, but also like, hey, you can assess our roster and also assess what practice is like. How do the coaches interact during practice? But really, let me see what the level is. I know what I've heard. I know what I know some of the guys that go there. Some of my former high school teammates are playing there. Former summer ball teammates are playing up there, and they're doing well or whatever. But let me go watch the level for myself and acclimate myself with college baseball at that particular level or in that particular program. Because for me, it's about, like in recruiting, immersing yourself in the university and in the baseball program as much as you can so you can really make an informed decision. Is this where I want to be a student athlete?
Yeah, and you're walking right into my next trap. Just, all that stuff is good advice. And we spend so much time, we as in guys that are doing baseball development, guys that are coaching youth, amateur, travel ball. We spend so much time talking about, like, guys, this is what coaches want to see. Guys, this is what they're looking for. Guys, here's what they want. Let them hear firsthand from a Division III head coach who's been coaching Division III baseball for what, 20 years?
22 years.
22 years now. And then you played for 4 years before that. So you've been in Division III baseball for over 25 years. And not to make coach feel old, but guys, that's a long time in college baseball. That's a lot of games. How many games does that equate to?
Well, I know I have a running joke with my assistant, Coach Hayden Craig. If I suspect something and I have a hunch and I say it and it happens, and he'll chuckle, and I always say, like, hey man, 1,000 games, 1,000 games at this level. And it was kind of just an estimation and a running joke. And after the season last year, I did count it or go back and count it as a player and a coach, and it's 997. So we're getting there.
Getting there.
You know, first weekend of the year this year, we'll get to 1,000 at this
There you
level.
go.
But it's a lot. It's a lot of games. You
Yeah.
know, it's a long time. It's a lot of games, but you know that just provides you a lot of context.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of things you see over that amount of time
Right.
where you can start kind of having a feel for the flow and how things may unfold. Players are certainly much more skilled.
Yeah.
Right. We're certainly getting a much better player year after year because
Right.
the talent just across the board is getting better at every level. It's now just a matter of teaching different things, right?
Sure.
They're maybe more skilled in this area, but maybe not this area, and we're trying to work and identify how do we get these guys to play team baseball with this skill set that we're now getting, right? But for sure, that's a big part of it.
Right. So you're talking about you're damn near 1,000 games, all this time spent, time spent with Division III baseball and players. I know we've talked about this before, but you coached some summer ball and you coached some guys that played at higher levels, and I think some of those guys ended up being big leaguers.
Mm-hmm.
So you've been around those guys for sure. But taking this all back to what coaches are looking for, like what are you looking for in your D3 recruits right now? What do you need to see? And like that might be something pretty specific to you guys, but what is something that pretty much all of the D3 guys are looking for? I mean, you spend a lot of time talking to the other coaches in the area too. What do you guys want to see?
Yeah, I mean, answering for us specifically, I mean, I can kind of take you quick, like positionally, like on the mound, the things that we're looking for, it's really four things you have to be able to do to be successful. You got to be able to throw your fastball to both sides of the plate. You've got to be able to command two off-speed pitches in the zone that you can maybe throw in the zone behind in the count too. Field your position, and help us control the running game. And pitchers that do those four things tend to be pretty successful at our level. Now, of course, I didn't mention velocity, and velocity is a sliding scale. The harder you throw, you can maybe get away with a little bit some of your on the command side, or if you have some swing and miss off-speed stuff, you can maybe get away with a little bit less on the command side. But in generalities, those are the four things there on the mound. For the catcher, it's receiving first, then blocking, then throwing. Everybody talks about the pop time. You're going to throw the ball probably 5% of the time you're back there. You're going to receive it probably, 85, 90% of the time. You have to be able to receive well. You need some presence back there, and obviously, on the hitting side, you've got to be able to be a productive offensive player within your skill set. So are you a run scorer, a run producer, are you driving in runs, are you setting the table, whatever you are offensively, being able to be, fit into a team offense. Middle infielders, you've got to be super athletic, you've got to be smart, you've got to have really good feet. It really starts with the feet in the middle infield for us when I'm evaluating an infielder. Their feet play them into a lot of good hops or a lot of bad hops. And you add or reduce the pressure on your hands when you can play yourself into a better hop. Your corner infielders, they need to be tough. They need to be physical. They need to be willing to use their body and their glove. Corner infielders are more of a one-handed defensive position, so they're going to be a little bit more unique there, whereas your middle guys have a little more time to be a two-handed defender. Those guys in the corner are probably going to be some more of your offensive guys. And then for us in the outfield, it's an athlete first. We're certainly, as I mentioned earlier, we're aggressive. We steal a lot of bags. We play a very aggressive style. So we're looking for guys that fit that mold. But then again, the one thing that gets you in the lineup always is the stick.
Yeah.
And if you can swing it, there's ways to get, to become an impact guy at the college level. But there's only one DH, there's only one first baseman, and that line in Moneyball that's so funny but also true when they were trying to get Hatterberg out of retirement or whatever, and they're like, well, we just want you to play first.
First base, it's easy.
Yeah, he's like, tell him, Wash, it's easy. And he's like, it's very difficult.
It's extremely hard.
You handle the ball so much, like it's a very tough place to play. So you can't just stick any old, bat swinger over there and hope they play good defense, Defense at first base specifically is one of those positions when you have a really good one, you take it for granted. And then when they graduate and you get another guy in there, you're like, boy, that guy saved us a lot of errors.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't even really realize,
Yeah.
you know, how valuable it was. But that's kind of a you know, a quick overview positionally where we're looking, you know, what are the skills we're looking to identify.
Yeah.
You know, and defense and hitting is also a little bit of a sliding scale too, right?
Sure.
Everybody wants the high level defender that's super athletic that rakes,
Yeah.
right? But you've also got to kind of say, okay, this guy's a really high level defender. We got to, you know, he's got to come along a little bit with the bat. You know, where do we project this player becoming? If he gains some strength, gains some weight, cleans up a little bit mechanically, where do we project this pitcher? Okay, the delivery's clean and repeatable, but he's got to get a little more mass, or he's got to get, you know, develop a little bit better, you know, secondary command, and then he can be a guy for us. Those kind of things, and projection's a big part of it too.
That was great insight because he kind of went through every position on the field and talked about what you guys are looking for and kind of the order that you're looking for them in. And what you guys see is that some of the metric driven stuff is actually not the first thing you're looking for. First thing you're looking for is like ball player and athlete first at all the positions. You want ball players. Guys, we want guys that are smart. You want guys that are savvy. You want guys that understand the position they're playing at. I mean, there's so many times where, you know, I'll get a hitter. Comes along, he's on a team I'm playing on, or I see a guy hit, and he doesn't have a position. Like, he legit doesn't have a position. Like, he can't play second. He can't play right. He can't play catcher. He can't play first. It's like, man, I don't know where to put this guy. And I'm sure you guys see that too. You're like, man, we'd love to have that bat, but we can't recruit DHs.
Right.
You know, like that. You guys are hearing it firsthand. You need to become a ball player. You need to develop the skills necessary at that position that sets you a little bit above other guys at that position. Just a ho-hum high school player at his position is probably going to just get a ho-hum chance at college baseball. You need to at least bring a tool to the table that is like, okay, this stacks up against college players, right?
100%. And even the reference, like where you said, you know, a guy that doesn't really have a position,
yeah,
you'd have to hit so much and be such a lethal offensive player
and an athlete,
you know, to be recruited without being able to play
right.
defense.
Right.
Because that's a really hard way to get on the field, right? Because it's hard to be just a DH when that's your only value to the you know, to the ball club.
Sure.
Where you can't really be a defensive option, because if our better hitters can get to where they can be comparable defenders, it allows us to put an extra good hitter in there. You know, if we have to DH one of our, you know, guys, well, like I said, there's only one DH.
Yeah.
And we have to be able to defend.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it's about, you know, pitching and defense first. If we pitch and pick it up, we're in every game, regardless of the quality of opponent that we're playing. If we pitch it well, throw strikes, and make routine plays, and don't beat ourselves when we're on the field defensively, we're in every game.
Sure.
And then we can, you know, figure out how to, you know, get the offense going to cover us up there. And that's not to say that pitching and defense is more important or more of a priority than team offensive baseball, because it's not. But it's very hard to stay in a game if you can't pitch and pick it up.
Yeah.
Because scoring is hard. And if you're giving up 8-10 runs, that's a really hard game to win. If you're giving up 3 or 4, you're not asking your offense to have to be elite just to get a win.
Right.
You know, you're asking them to just be productive.
Right.
And that's kind of where we're trying to. It's like I said earlier. It's why we structure our practice. Like, we're going to play good defense before we get a chance to hit.
Yeah, I love that, man. I think that's awesome. And you get the question all the time. I'm alluding back to travel balls. Are we hitting today, coach? We hitting? It's like, man, we only got so much time, and we got to, like, we can hit in a cage whenever.
Right.
But you only get so much time on the field, and that stuff's important. So, like, the next question I'm going to ask, I can't wait to ask this, but I'm on my guys I don't do a good job of it. I need to do a better job of it, but I'm on my guys all the time about base running and the running game. So the offensive side, and then pitchers, catchers, batteries, infielders, middle infielders, controlling the running game. And I know this is something that you are huge on. Piedmont has been big on. guys in the past that have coached you, Coach Austin at Methodist, we'll get into that a little bit later. They were huge on it. The best programs have attention to detail when it comes to the base running and the controlling of the running game piece. How important is that when you're recruiting? I know that you guys understand that at the high school level, not a lot of people do a great job of it, but is it a bonus when you see guys that do a good job?
Oh, for sure. And you're 100% right. It's a little, especially on the stopping the running game portion.
Right.
We get a lot more high school players that have some base stealing ability.
Yeah.
Because I think in high school it's a little underemphasized in the ability to stop it unless people run. Yeah. So if you are a stolen base guy, at your high school program or in your summer program or whatever, you probably can find a lot of quick success there. I think one of the best things that helps our pitchers learn how to control the running game is having to practice against ourselves, because we classify ourselves as a good base stealing team. I think historically we have been. It's still a work in progress. There's still certainly things we have to get better at collectively. But for us to be a 100 stolen base team, let's say, which we were fortunate enough to be last year, because we had some good guys that stole a lot of bags for us. That's hard to stop in practice. And when we get freshman pitchers in there,
so that their mechanics can work. Obviously, the bigger bodied guys need a little bit more time. Quick movers versus slow movers, stuff like that. But what is kind of that window that you like to keep your guys in? And then on the offensive side, what's the edge of that window that you're trying to get to run?
Yeah, I think 1-3 or better for a right-handed pitcher,
Okay.
time to the plate, and 1-4 or better for a left-handed pitcher is kind of like our benchmark. We're trying to be at those or under. I think something that's undervalued is, everybody knows the pitcher time and then the catcher pop time, but it's the third piece of time is we've got to catch and tag the ball.
Yes.
We've got to tag. So a 1-9 pop time that is, a little bit left of the middle infielder's ear.
So catcher accuracy.
Right, because what is the catcher's accuracy? Because that's it's a small amount of time,
right?
But sometimes it's the difference between safe out,
Sure.
right? We talk offensively about trying to be in that 82 to 85% success rate.
Right.
We understand that when we run a lot, there's the risk of, obviously a pickoff, but also of being caught stealing.
Right.
And when our guys stay within structure and get thrown out stealing, they're going to get a pat on the backside. I'm going to say, keep running.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to be aggressive, because the stolen base is a part of our offense. But I would, argue that the threat of us running also is a benefit.
Sure.
We get more pickoffs when we're not going, or when we might be in green light. We get more fastballs to hit. We get a pitcher maybe elevating the ball in the zone because they're cognizant of the threat of us running. So the ancillary benefits of us being an aggressive base running, base stealing team, we see that from the team offensive standpoint. I don't believe we were last year, but a couple years prior, I think we were top 5 in the country in walks.
Yeah.
Offensively a couple times in the last 4 or 5 years. And it's really nothing we've ever emphasized. And I think it's just a byproduct of, some of the threat we have
Sure.
as a base stealing group, where we just accumulated a lot of walks. Now, the danger of walking a lot is you probably strike out a lot too, because, the deeper the counts,
right, right.
50% of at-bats go to 2 strikes anyway.
Sure.
But if you're having a lot of walks, you're probably getting to a lot of deep counts, and then strikeouts happen that way too. But it's nothing we've ever been, we're not certainly going up to the plate looking to walk, but you may get some ancillary benefits of being an aggressive base stealing team, or an aggressive base stealer yourself, as a high school player.
Sure.
Where you can maybe, create different opportunities for your team offensively because of that.
Yeah, no, I like that. So you guys just got a whole boatload of stuff on what college coaches are looking for. And a lot of that was super detailed stuff. Not once did Coach Scali say, you need to hit the ball into the trees. Not once did he say, we need guys that throw 92 plus.
We'll take them, though.
You'll take them, though. Now, granted, and we've talked about this before, the metric side probably comes into play a little bit more for pitchers, right? Like you said, velocity is kind of 3rd, 4th, 5th on the list of things that you like to see. But just kind of this will be huge for my guys listening, whoever else is listening. Is there kind of a baseline, obviously, that you're looking for, like right-handed pitcher and a left-handed pitcher, of just a fastball range that you guys are looking for? I mean, obviously, you're not going to take a high school pitcher that's throwing 67.
Right. I mean,
what are you guys looking for?
There's definitely a skill set minimum.
Right.
Right. And specific to the mound, there is some wiggle room there. Like, you've got to have, if you're a lower velo guy, if you're a 78, 82 left-handed pitcher, you've got to be really, really elite in the ancillary stuff.
Sure.
You got to control the running game. You got to have superior command. You have to be able to pitch in. You've got to have maybe 2 off-speed pitches you can throw for a strike. You got to be able to field your position. You can't, if you can't do those things and you don't have swing and miss type stuff, you're just going to have a hard time hanging zeros.
Right.
Same thing from a right-handed pitcher. If you're an 80, 84 righty, lower end, on the velocity side of things, it's not that you can't be successful. Right. I mean, if you look at the Piedmont record book for pitchers, for starting pitchers, Sam Carpenter has just about every record you can have in our program: wins, innings, strikeouts, all the starting pitcher records you're looking for, innings, all that stuff, single season, career. He had like 350 strikeouts, and I joke with Sam about this all the time. He tells me he topped out at 87, and I always say I mustn't have been at that game, but he was in that 81, 84 range.
Right.
But could throw the ball anywhere he wanted to, any pitch, any count. Best fastball in pitcher I've ever coached. From a left-handed pitching perspective, more strikeouts looking into righties on fastballs than anyone I've ever seen. A devastating forkball that he played 5 years for us because of a COVID year. The guys knew it was coming, and you couldn't not go at it. And he had, I think, 3 or 4 starts in his career where a batter didn't get a third ball in the game. I mean, just saying that out loud is almost funny. It's almost comical to think that that's feasible. But the 72, 73% strikes for a season, just astronomically high strike percentage with all of his stuff. And that's what made him so tough.
Right.
Plus, ultra competitor, like every pitcher is, but him to the 10th degree is like never wanted to come out of a game.
Sure.
Man, when I took him out of a game, it was, he was not pleased if he came out of a game, nor should he be. But that's what you want out there on a Friday, right? But he was not, and he would tell you, not a flamethrower, but probably a better understanding of what he was and wasn't than maybe any pitcher I've ever coached.
Yeah.
Because a lot of pitchers chase the velocity, which I know Sam wanted to throw harder, but he understood his success comes from pitching, learning how to pitch, confident with your fastball to both sides of the plate. He had that great forkball, but I would tell you he was a fastball pitcher. But what we see from a metric standpoint was super high fastball spin. For a guy that didn't have, 1 to 90, 92 velo guy,
right?
But a fastball that played up because of the high spin, So those metrics are a great tool for development. But at the end of the day, you've got to take the baseball and throw it to the corners of the strike zone.
Right.
And that comes from in here.
I think you said something about, the fastball playing up. Not enough people talk about that because as a hitter, there were guys that were 90 that I'm like, I see this guy great, man. I can hit this all day. This is flat. It's in the middle of the plate. I can hit this. I like to hit this. And then there were guys that were 80, 81. And I'm like, first of all, it seems like it's 85 and it's a bowling ball. And I can't see it. I can't hit it. And I think there's a lot to be said for that because so much of what we do, and listen, we do this here. Our pitchers train here inside, throwing a lot of pins. Sometimes we'll throw to catchers. Sometimes we're throwing in 9 pockets. We're doing velo training where sometimes you're not working on pitching. You're just working on velo. And that's okay. You guys need to work on that stuff. But there's something that you can't get in training where it's like, okay, you have a pitch that plays up. And we're starting to pay a little bit more attention to that in the metrics, like a fastball that has a lot of vertical break versus a fastball that has more horizontal break or a combination of the two or a true sinker. Like we're seeing this stuff now. We're placing a more, I shouldn't say importance, but we're starting to analyze data a little bit more to understand, okay, it's okay that you throw 88 and not 94 because your 88 plays like 93. Like your 88 plays up, but you're going to need to use it that way. You're going to need to pitch differently. You're going to need to focus on pitching in. You're going to need to focus maybe a little more up in the zone at times where everyone else is going to need to stay down in the zone. Like, has that changed now in the way data is looked at? Do you guys use any data? And how are you attacking hitters from a pitching perspective? Because I know back in the day when I was at Piedmont, everything was, hey man, we're gonna pound the string. We're gonna be down in the zone.
Right.
And has that changed at all for you guys? Have you changed your tune, or do you kind of stick with the old school? Hey, we're gonna try to nail guys down in the zone and pitch in.
Yeah, I mean, definitely from a fastball up perspective.
Yeah.
Like we now can target guys that can have a little bit more success high fastball,
Sure.
Right? That riding fastball. You touched on it a little bit. I talk to our pitchers all the time and our hitters. There's 2 types of velocity, right? There's actual, right? That's a radar gun says it's this fast.
Right.
But there's perceived, and that's the only one that matters. And it's your exact comment that you gave. I will ask when we see a pitcher that we haven't seen before. I love asking the first or second hitter in the game, how fast do you think he's throwing? I already can pretty much IDAR. I have a feel for the velo, and I scouted him on Synergy too. So
sure.
I know what the velo is. But I'll ask our first or second guy, like if he makes out, like how fast is it? And if the guy's 88, 90, and they come in and say 84, 85, I think, well, we're going to be all right today. Yeah. And if they come in and say 92, 93, I'm thinking like, this guy's getting on us a little bit.
Yeah,
like, this is a tough look.
Right.
It's heavy. It plays up, whatever. So I ask those kind of questions sometimes just to gauge that perceived velocity. But the perceived velocity is huge. Even what our players tell me when I throw BP to them, or if I'm throwing, like Coach Craig will have me go out there and mix to them sometimes where, I can revert back 25 years like I'm competing again.
You love that.
I do love it still. I'm not going to lie. I did it just last week. But they say in how I throw, like something I do with my front arm that is not, it's subconscious. I don't know what I'm doing. but it's a little bit later to pick up the ball.
Gotcha.
So it's the same velocity, but you get a few feet cut off from when you actually get it out of the window, and that helps a guy play up, even if it's not a high spin
Sure.
fastball or it's not a top of the zone fastball. So there's a lot of factors that play into perceived velocity, which is ultimately what you're competing against, right? And the metrics, the data has certainly helped us alter not only in how we pitch, but alter in how we teach.
Yeah.
How we teach improvement of a breaking ball, how we teach the changeup, how we can assess different things from a spin, a break perspective, release height, tunneling, all the things that those machine, Rapsodo, whatever, have the ability to show us that our eyes have told us over the years.
Sure.
But now a player has hard data,
evidence, right?
that the evidence that backs up what we're seeing, what the catcher's seeing. Like, you know, I'm always talking to our catchers in changeup development, like, what's the spin presentation? You know, what do you see on the baseball comparative to our two-seamer, comparative to our four-seamer? Sure, it's going to spin slower, but do we spin, you know, is our spin presentation similar?
Yeah.
Because we're trying to develop a deception pitch here with a changeup.
Right.
We know what the velocity differential is, but what does it look like? Sometimes you have a good velo differential, but because of our grip, the seams are spinning, you know, in a way that it's identifiable to a batter.
Yeah.
And sometimes in teaching changeup, I go down there and stand in the batter's box.
Yeah.
I want to assess the spin.
Yep.
You know, I'm getting a little bit older. I got to be able to move a little bit quicker, you know, in case one gets loose. But, you know, just those types of things that are now, we're able to use those metrics and analyze a little bit differently to just attack improvement.
I do have a question, because we're talking about all this. We're talking about, you know, Sam. I just talked to Sam not too long ago because there was a kid interested in playing at Emory, and I had a phone conversation with him. But talking about Sam, you know, talking about hitters, talking about just, you know, guys that you've seen and had over the years. I've asked you this question before. I'm going to ask it a little bit differently this time. Best D3 player you've ever seen, but then best D3 pitcher you've ever seen, best D3 hitter you've ever seen, and best D3 base runner you've ever seen.
Ooh, that's a good one. Man, it's hard for me not to be biased when I answer these questions, you know, because, you know, of course I'm a longtime Piedmont guy, so certainly got some guys up there. When I think about best players, I think the guys that immediately come to mind, you know, Joseph Odom in Huntington was a, you know, big leaguer. Tim Saunders at Marietta. I coached a game when I was at Ohio Northern against Matt DeSalvo for Marietta that I think the old strikeout record for a career was around 450, and I think he got over 600.
Oh, my God.
We faced that dude in like a 30-degree day at Ohio Northern, and he, you know, they got there. He didn't get off the bus till about 40 minutes before the game. I don't blame him. It was frigid. And in a 7-inning game back then, I think he had 17 or 18 strikeouts. And it was the most unfair, and that's not to knock the guys we had. I mean, we were in there grinding, but it was just, I mean, it was incredible to watch this kid pitch.
Right.
And, you know, he made the big leagues too. I referenced Sam. You know, he's in the top 10, top 15, you know, all time in some NCAA marks in a 30-game winner, 350 strikeouts. Like those are benchmarks that you just don't get that. You know, those are huge numbers at this level. You know, but the best player I've ever seen, and this is certainly a biased answer, but it's Carter Ballstaff for me. Carter played for us for 5 years. The amount of things that he does well on a baseball field is really just, it's uncanny. I mean, a Gold Glove defender, you know, to win a national Gold Glove is one of the hardest awards to win in NCAA baseball. I mean, they give 3 of them out in the outfield.
That's crazy.
I mean, there's 400 schools. That's 1,200 outfielders that play every day, right? Probably more when you factor in guys. You're probably talking 13, 14, 1,500 outfielders to be one of 3 that win a national Gold Glove. And that Gold Glove trophy is sweet. You know, we've got it in our trophy case because we bought a replica so he could have it at his house. We've been fortunate to have 2 Gold Glove winners at Piedmont. But Carter won a Gold Glove as a defender in center field. Elite arm strength for an outfielder. I do feel like outfield arm strength is one of the tools that's a little more on the overrated side.
Sure.
Unless you're into his level of arm, and now it can be a difference maker because it came with accuracy. But phenomenal base stealer. Really good savvy on the bases. Hit third, played center field. Had a 12 home run season, most extra base hits we've ever had, most home runs, RBIs, slugging percentage, and he was 91 to 95 on the mound and has our saves record too. And has, it's that 2020 club, right? Like 20 homers, 20 saves. That's a weird.
That's an Ohtani stat.
It's weird, but it's like I said, he's like a unicorn.
Yeah.
He just did so many things that at a dominant level. Two-time All-American.
Two-time All-American. That's a big deal, guys.
The funny thing about Carter too, that it's ancillary to his statistical data, but the most confident player I've ever coached.
Yeah.
Without question. Sam Carpenter was up there too.
Yeah.
But Carter's confidence in his own ability, and it never bordered into arrogance outwardly, but he would say phrases to me like, and he was just matter of fact, and I did not believe him, but he said one time, if I hit every single count was 3-1, I think I'd hit 700.
Yeah.
And I think he meant it. He just felt so confident when he got in these hitters' counts because you're just such a high likelihood of getting a fastball to hit, and he can arrive on time. Or when he met with me one time about his goals, and he went through some goals, and then he got to the pitching side, and he said to me, I want to average 2 strikeouts per inning for this season, to which my initial reaction was, that's not a good goal because that's not really realistic. Number 2, I don't want you pitching in a way to try to get too many strikeouts, right? We need to execute pitches, right? These kind of things. And I didn't say anything, and I just kind of left it there. And that season, he had 10 he led the country in saves. He threw, I think, 25 innings and had 49 strikeouts. So he about did it. And I was glad I didn't say anything, and we've had a laugh about that since. But he's certainly up there as just the best baseball player I've ever seen because of the amount of things that he does on the field.
Yeah.
Not just a pitcher, not just a position player, not just an elite closer, a power hitter, a base stealer, and it because, we had his older brother too. And Brady was also a phenomenal baseball player too in his own right, and also an All-American. So for Carter to come in after, his brother was a senior when Carter got to our place, and his brother was a returning All-American. And that probably cast a big shadow on most kids, but not for Carter. He was his own man from the day we got him. He was his own player. Came in and worked, put some weight on in a good way, got stronger. Only had 4 at-bats as a freshman. Was a high leverage pitcher for us as a freshman, but only had 3 or 4 at-bats, and didn't have a great offensive year his sophomore year when he had earned the center field job in the COVID year, and then just made a choice that he was going to be a different offensive player. And his last 3 years offensively was just, such a high level player. But I've coached and seen so many great players, even the ones that come to mind more recently, like, McKinley Irves and Joe Ruth at LaGrange.
Yeah.
One of our conference members. Those guys are just such high level baseball players.
Right.
Eventually they'll, one of them's gone. Now eventually the other one will eventually be gone. But just so many good players over the years. But like I said, I'm always kind of a little partial to our guys in those Piedmont Lions.
Well, and you get to see them more.
Right.
Right. So you see the best of the best. Yeah, you see their bad days and their tough days too. But I would argue that probably makes them seem tougher and stronger to you, knowing that they can battle through that and still play at such a high level. How about pitcher? Like, this, obviously being a two-way guy, he probably falls into that same category. But maybe you have a different guy that it's like, well, he's the overall best guy I've ever seen in D3. But what's the best arm that you've seen? Just a total dominant guy. I mean, you mentioned DeSalvo at Marietta, but have you seen any other guys that are like, no, it's this guy?
For sure. There was a guy we saw a couple years ago at Chapman that was a closer. I think he was a 3rd-round draft pick, and I think he was like came in as a third baseman.
Okay.
Had a really good arm.
Yeah.
I guess he, maybe wasn't hitting the way they expected because they saw the arm strength, put him on the mound, and he was like 94, 97 when we faced him.
Cheddar.
I mean, propane.
Yeah.
The funny story about facing him, because he's definitely up there. The funny story about facing him, we were in Arizona, and when we played in Arizona, I spent a lot of time that tournament scouting because we had a tournament at home the next weekend with a couple of the teams from out west that were at this event in Tucson. So I was doing a lot of scouting, and we were playing Chapman the next day. So I caught Chapman the day before against someone else we were going to be playing. Well, they brought this kid in, Nick Garcia. They brought him in to close a game in the 9th inning with I think 1st and 2nd, 1 out. And they bring him in, and I'm sitting behind the backstop watching, and a couple seats in front of me is the Chapman guys, and they got the gun, so I'm watching it. And it's 94, 96, 97. I mean, he is throwing, it's propane. And he's letting it eat. And he has like a 15, 17 pitch, no problem, 3-out save, and throws all fastballs, okay? So fast forward to 24 hours, and now we're playing him. And we're up 6-3 in the 7th. We end up giving up some runs. We make a misplay, like kind of a pickoff throw goes awry. We end up giving up a couple runs, and they go to him, okay? And I get the hitters up, and it's on the scouting report, that I've hung up. But I get the hitters up. I'm like, look, saw him yesterday, super high velo. We got to get our foot down. It was 100% fastballs, okay? And my guy Noah Heatherly, who played for us and coached with me, and he's in med school now. He loves this story because, he was a baseball thinker. He was a catcher and certainly thought the game along with us. So he's the first hitter that's going to go up there and face him. And he's expecting, 94, 97. And
he gets a slider.
He gets a yacker on the first pitch. And he didn't throw one in warm-ups either. Uh-huh. So we still haven't seen it. Yeah. And he drops a hammer at us on the first pitch. And Noah probably thinks it's going for his head. He bails way out. And he turns to the dugout, and he's like, hey. And we're like, we saw it, buddy. We got you. I'm sorry. I tried my hardest in scouting. We just didn't see that one. But
that's awesome.
He was definitely up there, too, just from a sheer arm strength perspective. Yeah. Base stealers, there's a lot of good guys. I know Maryville had a guy several years back that was in the 40 stolen bases when we faced him.
Oh, wow.
Hollingsworth was his last name. Yeah. He was high up there. Just the willingness to go. With the base runners, our best base stealers have not been necessarily our 6'4", 6'5", 60 guys.
Sure.
It's our 6'8", 6'9", 60 guys with super high intellect and instincts. Yeah. And those are the guys that are the most dangerous because all the things you do to try to curtail their attempts, they're one step ahead of you.
Yeah.
And that's the dangerous guy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can honestly, that was kind of what I remember from playing Division III is you look at some guys that get off the bus and you're like, it's nothing special, man. He's just an okay player. And you're like, God dang, that guy can steal some bags. That guy he finds a way to put everything in play,
right.
And it's not always the biggest guy, the strongest guy, the best looking guy. There's some really, really good ball players who have to almost teach themselves how to be great ball players at this given level.
Yeah, I mean, self-made players.
Guy that I think about all the time who actually works here with us now, so you guys are going to know who he is, Mikee Moore. I'm sure you could tell 1,000 stories about him, but I played when he played. Mikee was a year or two younger than I was, so I think he still played for another year when Dale was playing, and then he ultimately went to Georgia College and made the rare jump to going from Division III to Division II and getting thrust into a lineup at Georgia College right away. So that kind of shows you what kind of talent he had. But what do you remember about him? Because what I remember is being the opposing center fielder and being like, this guy's fucking better than me.
Defensively, as good as anything I've seen.
Yeah.
And that's not to take away anything that he did as an offensive player. Right. But defensively, it just looked different.
Yeah.
Used
to play so shallow.
I know.
Because I played a deep center
right.
field.
And you'd think you could burn him, but you
Man,
couldn't.
you couldn't burn him. You couldn't burn him. And he probably was that 6'5" runner.
Right.
And he showed it off, man. I remember him playing the outfield and going to get balls, and he showed it off. And just that same speed that he showed in the outfield, it was like the offensive game was like that. Everything was like lightning quick with him.
Yep.
But yeah, man, just thinking back to 2011, I had a decent year that year, playing center field. I'm like, man, I might have a shot to do all conference or something. Mikey freaking had a hell of a year too, and had like 40-something RBIs. I'm like, okay, well, not getting that done. He outdid me there, but me and Mikey joke all the time. It's like, dude, you were pretty damn good. Like,
the thing I remember, and it's a rare trait, but like when you'd hit a ball, like in the outfield, if you hit a ball to an outfielder, and by the time you take your eyes to the ball and to the outfielder, he was always already full speed.
Full speed.
And that's, that's instincts, that's anticipation, that's, being ready as the ball's entering the hit zone, of course, but the quickness, the good first step, the right route, right angle. He's one of those guys that was, full speed when you are looking, your eyes work right to the ball and he's already wide open, running it down.
Definitely a special player. You were talking about Arizona a little bit, and I know you guys have taken several trips and some plane trips, which when I was playing, I never went on, I've flown on a plane before, but I had never taken a plane for baseball. When did you guys start doing that? And is that kind of a ritual and a standard now every year, every other year that you guys do that?
It is. We did it first in 2016 when Coach Peoples was the head coach still. In his last year, we flew to Texas, played a weekend series there. And then when I took over, I tried to do, we didn't fly in 17 or 18, but in 2019, we flew to Arizona, and I wanted to now do like an every other year thing. So we've done Arizona, we did California this past year, and we set it up home and home. So Cal Lutheran flew to us in 22, came out for a tournament. Coach Slim and Coach Shearer now there at Cal Lu were kind enough to make the trip out, fly into Atlanta, come and play us. So we returned the games in 23, and then we'll do the same with Chapman in 24, 25. Okay. So they're coming to us in 24. We'll return the trip in 25. So we try to take a plane trip every other year.
Yeah.
Got to do a little more fundraising, but
sure,
gives you an opportunity, gives our players an opportunity to see different parts of the country, compete against, the best teams in another area. We do try to, at least build in a semblance of let's explore this part of the country,
sure,
not just the hotel, the field,
right,
the bus, So like when we went to LA or Thousand Oaks this past spring, played Thursday, Friday, Saturday, took the guys to Santa Monica Pier.
That's cool.
Saturday after the game. And then Sunday, we toured the Rose Bowl, Dodger Stadium, right? Like, we'll try to do those kind of things. In Arizona, we toured Chase Field, or whatever it's called now, the Diamondbacks Stadium. And then Arizona State, Arizona, and just, give them a chance to see some stuff. Because, a lot of myself, too, we may not be in these areas anymore.
Sure.
So just a chance to experience that part of the country.
How many guys do you have that it's the first time they've ever flown before? Do you get that every once in a while?
We do, because you can, they're on the seat, a little bit more
grabbing on.
They're grabbing on. I always try to ask, like, how many guys have never flown before? Always get a few hands. My wife had never flown before when we started dating, because I think a lot of times in the Southeast, you don't need to fly. You can drive to beaches. You got great weather. You don't necessarily need to fly, and I'm from New York, so we were flying out of that mess all the time.
Sure,
flying to Florida, flying to different places.
JFK,
LaGuardia for us. Okay. Usually, if you're domestic, it's usually LaGuardia.
Okay.
Excuse me. The JFK is usually more international or longer flights, but we were a lot LaGuardia, East Coast.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have some players that have never flown for sure.
No, that's cool, man. That's cool. So you brought up Katie, and when you guys first started dating, and you said you're from New York, you played Division III baseball. So coming from New York, we did all this talk about recruiting. how did you get recruited? You wound up at Methodist. You played for Coach Tom Austin, just a legend in D3 baseball. How did you get recruited? And then, would you have recruited yourself?
I don't know if I would have recruited myself. I threw strikes.
Right.
That's an attractive trait for sure, but
Yeah.
I was a little bit of a bad body guy.
Sure.
I was fortunate. Coach People saw me pitch, and thankfully for me, projected me to be a good pitcher. The pitcher I was when I graduated college, that guy was a long way from the guy that got in, that came in. I relied, in high school a little more on my talent. Where I'm from, just baseball isn't as good. So I was able to get by on having a little bit of ability without having to work as hard, and kind of got humbled when I got to Methodist because it was, a nationally ranked program at the time. And, I thought I was just going to walk in there and be a two-way guy and all this. And, that certainly wasn't the case. I threw 4 innings as a freshman, I think, and 85 or 90 as a senior. So I had that journey, but, I was the last dude on the staff for a whole year. And that's what I should have been, because I wasn't quite, ready from a consistency standpoint, from a stuff development standpoint. But it was an adjustment for me for sure. Just coming down south into where there's a lot better baseball. Guys are playing all year, much higher level competition than I was used to playing. So it took me some time to just acclimate to the level of baseball.
Right.
For sure. It was definitely a transition for me.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So, did you and Katie meet in college?
So I met my wife when I got to Piedmont. So
Okay.
she's a Piedmont alum.
Uh,
I've got a master's degree from Piedmont.
Okay.
So she was a senior and then in grad school, and then I was in grad school at the same time. So that's where we met.
Okay.
She played soccer at Piedmont.
Right.
We met there I think my first year at Piedmont. So
Okay.
that 04-05 season.
Okay. So a few years fast forward there. You talked about how Coach Peeps recruited you. How special was that for him to be the guy that's like, okay, this guy gave me a chance as a college baseball player. He's the one that kind of opened the door for me. And then obviously you did your own legwork in college. You said you had your journey. But then ultimately being able to finish up at Methodist, go to Piedmont, do your master's, and then coach under Peeps for how many years?
12. So
12.
I was one of his assistants for 12 years. Coached with Richard Dombrowski for all 12 as well. Coach Peeps and Rudy and myself have the joint honor. We coached over 500 games together at Piedmont, the three of us, which at a small school, that's unique to get 3 guys at
Sure.
the same place for that long. And, the 3 of us were, we're certainly family.
Yeah.
I went far away from my home, for school. So Coach Peeps was always like a second dad to me. With my parents being, back home or, further away, he definitely was, far beyond just a baseball coach to me. Definitely took me under his wing, found ways to motivate me, saw better in me as a player than I was seeing in myself at the time. Saw better in me, honestly, as a student than I was producing at the time. Part of the reason and part of the things I do in monitoring our guys' academic progress is a direct reflection in how Peeps did that for me as a student, not just a player. Cared for me well beyond my ability to get people out on the mound.
Yeah.
Certainly made me a better pitcher, as did Coach Austin. But Coach Peeps was, certainly a great influence in me, and a lot of where I'm at today, I owe to the fact that he saw something in me as a high school player.
Yeah.
And it certainly put me on my path to where I am today. He was the most aggressive recruiter of all the schools that I was considering and that were recruiting me. He worked the hardest. I mean, I felt the most, like I was going to be the biggest impact at their program because of how aggressive he was in recruiting and how consistent he was in calling me every week and asking how the season's going and, setting up the visit, doing all this stuff. I mean, I just felt wanted and needed. And I try to do that, for our recruits too. But certainly, I've known Coach Peoples now, coming up on 25 years. That's a lot of days on a baseball field. That's a lot of meals at each other's places. That's a lot of rounds of golf. That's a lot of, deep conversations in the office. That's a lot of, Coach Peeps and I are similar in a lot of ways. That's a lot of passionate conversations in
Oh
the
yeah.
office,
Oh yeah.
But nothing but love for Coach Peeps and Coach D, who I was so fortunate enough to be a teammate of Coach D as well, at Methodist, but to coach together with those two guys for that long, and then it's been neat for me to transition into the head coach and to try to continue that culture amongst our coaching staff even now, with Coach JB, Coach Thomas, Drew Coker, Luke Harris, Hayden Craig, Trey Pierce, Kelton Kieschnick, all the guys that have coached with us, Zach Stein. I mean, all those guys, yourself, we've just had such a great collection of guys that I've got the chance to work with. It's part of what makes Piedmont baseball so special for me, is the people I'm out there working with,
I could bring anybody and put them in that chair and ask a question about Peeps, and they're probably going to say something the same. Like,
no doubt.
You said he was the hardest working recruiter. How he cared for you beyond what you cared for yourself at times, and like that. Those are probably the things that people would say. And like what I would say about this, and Peeps, we'll have you on the show too, because I'm sure you have some stuff to say about some guys, but he cares.
It's genuine. Too.
Like everything is genuine. Like he cares so much. And something that I would say, and this is just my respect for you, all three of you, like you said, you guys coach, 500 games together. Like the one word that comes to mind when I think about you guys as a staff and just as people is integrity, right? And that, I'm sure a lot of that comes from just you and Richard growing up under Peeps and under Coach Austin, so like, I guess I should ask, how much have you taken from both Peeps and Coach Austin, just being around those guys and watching what they've done and the successes that they've had? I mean, Coach Austin has coached 40-something years and has a ridiculous amount of wins. I don't even know what that number is now. It's 1,000 something, right? 1,300 wins. I mean, that's unheard of as a Division III coach, guys, as a coach, period. Like how much have you taken with you just as a man, as a coach, the things that you implement in your day-to-day strategy? Like what impact has that left on you?
Yeah, Peeps, the biggest things I've tried to emulate from Coach Peoples is just the stuff you mentioned and how he cared for every member of the program. How there was genuine love for every player in the program, from the first guy on the roster to the last guy, to genuinely caring about their success on and off the field. Just such a genuine guy. And obviously a lot of the baseball stuff, a lot of just, the in-game management of bullpens, all of those kind of things, the pitch calling stuff, a lot of that. From Coach Austin, I would say the two things that I think I connect most with, or that I, really emulate from him. Number one is the demeanor in game, in the dugout. And it's something that, I always marveled at, especially as a young player, his ability to just remain at least outwardly calm in big games, right? We're in the regional my freshman year. We won the regular season my freshman year at North Carolina Wesleyan. We had to sweep them to do it. And North Carolina Wesleyan, we did sweep them, and they didn't lose again the rest of the year. They won the national championship. But just in those games that were so tight, such a rivalry, and he was still the same guy. We're up a run in the 8th inning, and this is it. We got to get 6 outs, and he's managing the bullpen, and he's calling pitches, and we're going to sack bunt here, we're going to do whatever. Just that even keel nature. I think he always presented that, we could always look to one spot in the dugout and know that someone was stable. Even though on the inside, maybe not. And I know that's how it is for me. Like, I can control my emotions fairly well in the dugout. That doesn't mean on the inside I'm not going crazy. But that, and then a lot of the structure from a team defensive standpoint, a lot of the drills, but also in our language, in how we defend things, and the things that, the frequency in which we practice some things. A lot of that is, a lot of what we did there when I was a player,
Right.
and one semester there as a student assistant, in the fall after, when I was finishing up. So, you know, I've been very fortunate with Coach Peeps and Coach Austin, and having, two great baseball people, but great men that I still have great relationships with. I look forward to having dinner with Coach Austin at the convention every year, just talking baseball, talking about our teams and those kind of things. And obviously I get a chance to work with and for Coach Peoples. So
Sure.
He's entrusted me with our baseball program that he built,
Yep.
and that's something that, I don't take that lightly.
Yeah.
I think about Richard, I think about Coach Peeps all the time. And obviously our players, making our alumni proud is a big, it's at the top of my list every year. But Coach Peeps and Coach D spent, 16 or 15 and 14 years building Piedmont Baseball. And I was in there for the last 12. But we certainly did a lot of it together with the help of, obviously, of our players. And I just try to honor what they did for the program and try to make them proud, try to make our alumni proud, and in what kind of men leave our program, but also in, hopefully some success too.
Yeah.
That's obviously a big part of it.
I like that, man. I liked what you said about just, watching Coach Austin be the calming effect in the dugout. And I was watching Texas and Houston last night. I'm sure you watched the game. I'm sure a lot of people watched the game. They were literally talking about that on TV. I don't remember if it was Smoltz or whoever was on there talking about it. They were just talking about how that is Dusty Baker.
Right.
Like, that's what he is. But just like they were going into, talking about Bruce Bochy as well, and just saying how, he's a player's manager, and how that doesn't really mean he lets his players run wild. That's not what that means. What it means is when guys look down and see him, he gives them that calming effect. And I know, like, you talked about Coach Peeps, just kind of how he was such a fatherly figure to so many guys, and making guys feel comfortable and caring for every single guy in the dugout, in the clubhouse, on the team, whether they had a jersey and were dressing or not. That's huge, man. And I think, like, I'm sure for you, you try to embody that. And like you said, you're torn up on the inside sometimes, and you're nervous and you got butterflies. But like, over the years, as you've matured, you've gone from being an 18-year-old D3 player to now, being well into your career coaching. Like, how has that changed? Are you getting better at it? Do you feel like you're where you need to be? Are you hard on yourself? I know I'm hard on myself in terms of how I hold myself in certain situations. And I have a lot of fire. I'm a fiery person. So sometimes I get amped up and upset or excited. But to me, being able to hold a calm is important. And I think it takes a lot of maturity. I know for me personally, I'm nowhere near where I want to be. Like, I watch those managers on TV and I'm like, I want to be like that. That's cool. That's calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm at where I want to be either. Yeah. But what I will say is what I've gained, at least as I've gotten older, is I understand myself, and I know that I have to remain calm in order to be in my best place to make quality decisions under pressure. Whereas if I'm getting too up and down emotionally, in the game, I don't make, decisions as efficiently, or I don't, give myself an opportunity to ponder how I want to handle a certain situation, right? I think part of it is as you mature in the coaching profession is just learning a little bit more about yourself, right? I think one of the things I always worry about is, because that's my demeanor in the games, I always worry that our players think that it's not as important to me as that I don't care, or that I'm content with the result. And I'm not. When we lose a game, it crushes me when we lose a game. Just crushes me. And this is irrational, but I feel like I've let down our assistant coaches. I've let down our players. I've let down our alumni, our support staff, everyone who came to watch the game. Like, I've failed every single person, my family who's there supporting us. I've just failed everyone. And that's not rational, It's irrational.
Right.
But that's certainly how I feel. And I don't go about showing it by yelling and screaming and doing those things, because that's not, that's not how I like to compete. I think, as a coach, I think as a young player, especially, back home, I was I was on the cocky side.
Yeah.
I had to curtail that down
Sure.
and figure out where that line of cocky and confident was. But I think as a coach, I mean, again, like I said, it's not rational that I, just get beat up about what could I have done better, or why my sleep scores are so bad the nights we play, and they're fine in nights we don't. It's because I'm thinking about a lot of scenarios and how would I handle this, or what can I do to make us more prepared, or to honor the sacrifice that our players make in the weight room and all the stuff that we ask them to do, so just that they can reap the reward. One of my favorite coaches ever is Tom Coughlin. I'm a big Giants fan. We're not very good right now, but I do love the Giants, and especially Tom Coughlin. And he used to say all the time, like, they win, I lose. And I've tried to embody that, like, pass the credit, take the blame. And I try really hard to, at least at a minimum, share in when we don't win a game or when we're not successful. Like, hey, I also have to coach better, or I also have to prepare us better,
Right.
or something happened today that caught me off guard, or something that we haven't practiced enough, and that's my responsibility. Whereas one of my good friends in coaching at Piedmont, Coach Neely, told me this when I took over, like, the wins will go away like in seconds, and you'll just obsess about the losses. And I heard it, and I didn't kind of give it its due, I guess. And then, man, when you start being a head coach, and I was equally as competitive as an assistant, but I can genuinely say the feeling is so much different.
Yeah.
When we don't win, is how much I internalize, I just wish I'd have done better.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I've let our guys down. And again, I'm aware that that's not rational, right? I didn't throw a pitch, and the guys, I think our players would tell me, I think they would internalize it too and say, well, it has nothing to do with the coaches. I didn't drive that run in, or I didn't execute that pitch, or I didn't make that play. I think it's natural for a competitor to do that in a game like baseball, where there's so much failure, right? There's just so much. You threw a ball, you made an error, you didn't get a hit. Like, there's so much of that just the mental side of it, right? Coach JB always used to say a 3-hour baseball game, it's probably different now with the pitch clock, but a 3-hour baseball game, the ball's in the air for 8 minutes. That's how much we're playing, the game. So just that chance to be in your own thoughts, but internalizing, trying to take the loss and pass the win is something that I think Tom Coughlin was always so great at. And that's something I really try to emulate too, because I want our players to enjoy in their success on the field, and I want to share in any kind of responsibility when it didn't go our way.
Yeah, no, I like that, man. You're talking about all this, and then you're talking about internalizing some stuff, and for you, just being calm works for you. But I'm sure there are guys that can have all those same effects on their players, on their teams, on the people that they mentor and coach, and have a little bit more of an aggressive outward emotional piece as well. And one of the guys that comes to my mind, I'm literally picturing the YouTube video right now, is Augie Garrido from Texas, rest his soul. You've seen the famous locker room video where he's in there cussing his guy, like, how the F do you get picked off at first base? And he goes on this spiel for 5 minutes or so, and then at the end he goes, I'm sorry, I have totally failed you. And he walks out of the room. Like at the very end of freaking out, he lets everybody know, guys, it's on me.
Right.
But damn it, I want to win.
Right.
Like, this is my passion. I want to win. Not everybody can do that, because some people, in the process of letting all that out, would lose sight of the fact that, guys, it's on me. And I think that's what's so hard about being that type of coach. And let's be honest, like, when you see that as a coach, that fires you up. You're like, I want to be like that too. I want to yell. I want to scream. But not everybody can be good at that. Not everybody can be good at expressing it that way. And I think you have to match it up to the type of person you are, the type of coach you are, and what works best with your style.
And I think that's the big thing is you got to be true to yourself, but also you and I may have been motivated by that speech that Augie, gave,
Mm-hmm.
where it may have snapped us back into, you know, I got to do better. I'm going to change this or this. But some players are immediately shut off by that or go
Sure.
defensive. Like,
Sure.
So I think part of the fun part of being a coach is learning what type of
Personalities.
do you have in your locker room and how do you go about motivating the individual, where some guys, albeit maybe you or me, myself, wasn't the player that had to be told all the time that I'm doing well. I just wanted I wanted to be almost like a robot. If coach said do it this way, I
Right.
wanted to be an absolute machine.
That's the type A.
A textbook operator. If he said to touch this section of the base, I wanted to be perfect every rep. That's how I was motivated. Some people are motivated by, I have players that I know if I grabbed Kyle Carlson by the jersey and started screaming at him and said, you got to do it this way, he would look at me, nod, and go do it. And it wouldn't affect his level of play. I have other players, if I did that too,
go crawl in a hole.
They would not perform.
Yeah.
Where I can get the same result with the other player by just, maybe it's the arm around the shoulder saying, hey man, remember, you've been successful at this game. You've been swinging it great. Stick with your plan, and maybe he needs that conversation. And part of that is learning, your personnel.
Sure.
And that's a work in progress constantly. But there's a lot of that involved in being a coach. And that's where, the last piece I'll tell you where I think evolved a little bit as a coach is I haven't put my full self-worth in our win and loss record. It's equally as important to me as it ever was since the first day I started playing. But I can also see that there is a bigger picture in the people in our program and the relationships with our players. And I want those to be good too.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. They're equally as important to me. When it comes to, man, nothing tops 5-4 in the ninth inning and we're playing Lynchburg and we're up a run and they have their All-American at the plate and there's 2 outs and he certainly could leave the yard and I'm about to call a pitch.
Right.
Like that is the pinnacle of what at our level, our sport. That nothing tops that.
Right.
But whether we got the guy out or didn't, I hope I have a good relationship with the pitcher. You know what I mean? Right. So it goes deeper than just the success on the field. I'd like to have a good relationship with that pitcher and for him to get the guy out.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right. No, and that's how you build a culture. Like having those relationships, your players having relationships together, the coach to player, the coach to coach, the coaches to the other personnel, the training staff and the strength coaches. And like, Piedmont University, the Lions is a culture. It's a lion culture. And that's what you're trying to build. And I think every coach out there is trying to build that with their program. And players, like, you should want to be a part of that. You need to want to be a part of the culture. Like, we got a lot of guys here in this building. They're a part of our culture in terms of training and development. We love that. Like, when guys come in for throwing groups, man, well, let's get after it. But let's have a little fun doing it. Let's create a culture, the things that we talk about, the things we discuss. Guys come in for hitting groups. There's hitting lingo. There's little phrases that the hitters have. Training in the gym, that's a culture of itself. And it's like everywhere you go, that baseball culture follows you. And like you're talking about how you're continuing the house that Rudy and Peeps built, right? You're and obviously you were a big part of it, but you're carrying that program forward. How much of the culture piece goes into that, and how much time was spent on the front end of those guys just building the Piedmont culture? And then what does that mean for like your successes too, your conference tournaments, your conference tournament championships, your NCAA appearances? Like, it's all part of the culture, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And Coach D and Coach Peeps did the heavy lifting. They were in here at the beginning. I came, I think, in Coach Peeps' third year, or fourth year.
Were they NAIA then? Or was
they were transitioning when Coach Peeps took the job into Division III. Mm-hmm. So they were provisional D3 when he got the job, but they did the heavy lifting on kind of implementing some of the culture stuff. Yeah. Of course, we had to do it a little bit too, but I think that 05 freshman class was really kind of where we turned the corner. And that
Who are
group,
some guys? Is that like
Cole
Spadell,
Travis
Dimitrov?
Hunt.
Yeah.
Dimitrov was a transfer, so
Okay.
he was on that 08 team, but
Okay.
I think about Andy House,
Yeah.
Evan Nisley, Cole Spadell, Justin Oates, Travis Hunt, just to name a few. I'm not trying to leave anyone out, but those guys were huge in turning our program around and starting to build like winning into the equation, right? Like in building the program, I think first they had to clean up kind of the non-baseball off the field issue stuff that was kind of residual. They got rid of that stuff. Then it's about, can we get competitive against good people? Now can we figure out how to win against good people? Now and always, it's always about how do we go about sustaining success, right? And that's a long process. But I think, talking about just the P logo for us, right?
Sure.
You represent the P, but I think a lot of it now that we've been there for so long is the players do a lot of the install of the culture. They know what the expectations are. They get the new guys to hop right on board because players want to be accepted by the returning players. And they want to be embraced by the guys that are already here. They know who those guys are. They know what role they had. They know what success they had or team success. They want to be a part of it. Yeah. So they're really willing to embrace what your leaders or your upperclassmen instill right away. And when it gets to me, if an issue gets to me or our assistants, it's probably because the guys are having a hard time getting this guy to buy in. Right. And then it becomes a conversation where it's like, us with the player, like, hey, you're not meeting your end of the bargain off the field, like, or in what kind of teammate you are, or in the weight room, where those things are like non-negotiable, right? Like you're going to do this, this, and this if you ever want to step on the field. So I think from a culture standpoint, always evolving, but the things that are at the core is, what kind of people are we going to be? What kind of employees will we be? What kind of husbands, fathers, and then what kind of baseball players and what kind of teammates can we be?
And that's what culture's all about. I mean, obviously all the success stuff, it's supposed to be a byproduct, right? It's supposed to be a byproduct of the processes you guys put in. We talk about all the time, just learning to create a process, trust that process. That's the cliche. But then like the important part is loving your process. You have to love that process as well. You guys won a conference tournament this past year, and that's obviously a awesome accomplishment. Doesn't happen all the time. We've had the ups and downs, right? The Piedmont guys have had the ups and downs of going from the GSAC to the USA South to now the college conference,
collegiate conference of the South.
Conference of the South. I can never get that right. Obviously going through those changes, there's different things that come into play with your successes. Having an automatic qualifier to get into a regional versus not having an automatic qualifier, having to adjust the strength of schedule to make sure you guys are giving yourself a chance to play on the national stage. That all goes in with just your culture and your process, just learning to, hey man, we're going to take whatever we got to do to get it done. We're going to get it done. And that, I think that becomes part of the culture piece too. And I think the best programs, that's really what they do. They figure out how to get the job done.
Certainly, and I think it's just the things that you mentioned is just what you're emphasizing, right? It's what you make important. I forget who told me this, but I heard a coach say one time early in the season, first 2 weeks of the year, you can always tell what a team worked extra on in practice, right? Like, boy, they're clean defensively, right? Or boy, they are mashing the baseball, right? Like it's like, man, they took a lot of swings, in the cages or in preseason. It's the same kind of thing, right? Like those things that we emphasize culture-wise, the things you referenced, we are always going to emphasize that stuff. Yeah. When the winning comes with it, I mean that's when it's special. I think about you referenced us winning the tournament last year, which. I mean, you could have argued that every team in our league could have won that tournament. Mm-hmm. There were 4 teams in our league last year that got in the top 25 at one point in the season or another. We had we had fits with the league this year. I mean, it's a tough league with some veteran, experienced coaching, and some of my best friends in the profession. But they do such a good job with their programs. All of us could have won that. We just happened to get fortunate at the end. But just to watch our players react after the last out is why you coach. Yeah. I caught myself. The game ended, and our kids, they're running out there. And I'm walking across to shake Coach Helton's hand because for two reasons. Number one, that's what you do. You certainly shake the other coach's hand, but the first thing I told him is, I've been where he was.
Yeah.
In 2017, my first year as the head coach, we lost the first game of the conference tournament. We won 4 elimination games in 2 days, and we made it back to the championship game, and we got beat. And I knew what he felt like. I knew what his kids had went through to grind all the way through that, losers bracket and to clip off wins and big win after big win, and they were getting unbelievable pitching performances from guys that I know were tired, and even how well they played against us in the final when it was their 6th game in 4 days. I just told him how proud I thought he should have been of his kids, and I knew it hurt, but I had been there too. But just the elation on our kids' faces, and then what's special to me is just the bus trip home. Yeah. And that's something I'll never forget. When I think about the conference tournament, and we've won the tournament a few times, and it's always been special equally and uniquely. Sure. But for this particular one, it was the trip home. Just the guys playing the music and karaoke, making guys come up and do karaoke and, even getting our trainer Gabby on the karaoke too. And just that kind of stuff, that's college baseball.
I could tell a million stories right now about the bus trips and the karaoke and that kind of stuff. But, you've been fortunate enough with Piedmont to be a part of 2 NCAA regionals, and I'm not sure at Methodist if you guys went to any regionals or
3.
You went to 3 regionals. So you've been a part of 5 NCAA regionals as a coach and a player. Are you looking forward to getting back there? Because I know that's the goal, right?
That's what gets you up every day, right? Like, a couple years ago, a school, LaGrange in our league, went to the World Series, right? It's a constant reminder that, why can't we do it?
Sure.
I got to coach better. We got to recruit great players, work hard in the weight room, play more consistent, tweak things that we do, stay healthy, all those things, and it's certainly why it gets you up every day. Sure. I mean, when recruits ask me about, goals for our program, like I want to get our program to the College World Series.
Yeah.
And then I want to win games when we get there. Yeah. It's like, we had an initial team meeting this year, and I played that dog pile video at the end of my remarks, and from our dog pile, and of course, guys were excited and laughing and whatever, and then, without saying anything else, I played another video, and it was Lynchburg's dog pile, who won the national championship this past year, and I think you could feel the room just deflate because we beat Lynchburg, and they went 48-7, whatever they were, and they were phenomenal. And I texted their head coach, Lucas, after we saw them in our tournament and told him it was the best team I've seen in 5 years. And I told him that in February. I texted him in March and said, hey, you guys can win the whole thing. Like, I'm just following their season along because they're such good guys there. Their coaches are such good guys. Yeah. And they were so good. And I was glad it actually happened, but for him, wish it was us, obviously, but I showed that video because I wanted our players to know, like, that was the pinnacle of our sport in 2023. And we faced them at our field and beat them.
Yep.
So it's in there. Our best is a very, very good club. We've just got to work to get our level here.
Yeah. Consistency.
That analogy I give our guys, I gave them the other day, was like, this is our level, this is the level we're trying to be at. And it's about, you're going to have days that are up and down. It's about just shallowing out the down, without trying to get the bottoms to be too low where they're only for an inning instead of for a game, or they're only for a game
waves
instead of for a series, right? And just trying to shallow out the low end, because it's baseball. You're going to have days where you don't swing it, don't pitch it, don't pick it up. don't let it be weekends. Don't let it be 2 week. Don't let it be longer stretches that ultimately keep you from hanging banners on the right side of our fence at our place. You know?
Yep. No, that's great, man. Well, I'm hoping you guys have a good season, and obviously, if you get to that stage, man, I'd love to be a guy in the stands just watching. But where are they doing the World Series now?
So now this year it's moved to outside of Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
I think it's maybe Euclid, Ohio.
Okay.
It's somewhere Cleveland suburb.
Yep.
So it's up there by the lake. But yep, that's the end destination.
It's awesome,
for every team that starts, 400 some odd teams, we're all trying to get there.
Yeah. For sure.
8 people will get there. Just trying to be one of those 8.
Yep. Well, to you Piedmont guys, best of luck this year. You've got a good leader here, and I know he's doing the right thing for you guys. He's putting you in the right position to be successful and keep grinding, keep working. For everybody else out there watching, Coach, if there's one thing you can tell just the high school group of guys, 15 to 17, they have aspirations of playing college baseball. What would your advice be for them? Just the recruiting process, where they're at, development, just everything.
Yeah, the biggest thing I would advise is just at this point, if I could go back to that age and myself, nutrition and physical development. And if you can get yourself as athletic as possible, as strong as possible, making good food choices, because I think, like I mentioned, reference earlier, that's the gap we see with our incoming guys. It's just that physicality piece where you can shorten that or get your path to the field at your college program a little bit faster if you come in a little bit more advanced physically. And easy to say, hard to do.
Yep.
You've got to put in a ton of work to do it. A lot of guys 15 to 17 are just like our guys. They want to gain mass and gain weight. And that is not something that happens overnight. That's got to be a constant dedication to what you're putting in your body, how hard you're working, all the things you can do, within, a given time period to maximize, physically where you can get. But that would be my advice. And then if you're 15, 16, it's maximize what you can do in the classroom. The better the grade point average, the more money you're going to save in wherever you end up going to play college baseball.
Yep. Those two things, man, the academics and just getting stronger and like taking your training seriously, guys, it's discipline. You have to be disciplined in order to get better at it because, like you said, it's hard to do. It's easier said than done. It's easier said than done to just go in the classroom and get a 4.0. You got to work at it. You got to be disciplined. It's easier said than done to put on 10 pounds of lean mass. You got to work at it. You have to be disciplined. You have to understand your nutrition, your eating, and your sleep and everything that goes into it. So great advice, Coach. I'm not going to keep you all day. I know you got to get back. You got to coach some guys up. But back from the Juice Box, guys, Athletek Podcast, the Baseball Development Show. Coach, really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me, man. Go Lions.
Going to make sure I hit the stop button after this as well. So you guys tune in. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. If you got questions for Coach Scali, leave them below. Coach, where can they find you on Instagram?
Yeah, PU Lions Baseball, Piedmont University. So PU Lions Baseball, Twitter, Instagram. Bunch of stuff on there, a bunch of content. Coach Craig pumps out a lot of stuff there. Videos, all kinds of stuff. So PU Lions Baseball.
Awesome. Check it out, guys. Catch you all soon.